Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. Thank you to those of you who are joining me live. Thank you to those who are watching the replay. We're going to make this replay available publicly. So if you don't want something to be public, I guess don't ask the question. The purpose of the next hour, 15 minutes is for me to share with you what the heck the Akashic Records are, why they keep popping up everywhere, and then do some mini readings, share with you 3 specific ways in which the Akashic Records support us in remembering our wholeness, enoughness, worthiness, and divine self. And then, of course, do some mini readings. I've already had some of you submit questions, which is always so exciting for me. And then I'm going to share with you how, if you're interested, you can learn to read your own Akashic Records. First of all, before I get going, I want to share with you who I am. My name is Kasia Rachfall. I live in beautiful Okanagan, BC, in Kelowna, which is also known as wine country. And I've been working with the Akashic Records since about 2014. I started for myself in late 2014 and then kind of took it public in 2015 because it appears that the Akashic Records had different plans for me than I ever thought possible. So that's what we're going to be doing. I'm just going to keep admitting people as they come. Welcome, everybody. So good to see your faces. I just want to reiterate that we're going to be sharing this replay publicly. So at the end, I will be doing some mini readings. So if you don't mind having your answers shared out there on YouTube and with my whole community, then anything's on the table. But before we get there, let's just talk about the Akashic Records themselves. And of course, if at any point in time you have questions, you're welcome to pop it in the chat. I will try and keep an eye on it. Okay, why the Akashic Records? Why do they keep popping up for everybody? Well, as we answer a little bit about what the Akashic Records are, that might become a little bit more clear. So if you're here and you've heard the term Akashic Records, you might be curious about what it is. Perhaps you've never heard about what this is, and you've heard me talking about it, or you've heard other people talking about it. And again, you're curious about, what is this thing that we keep referring to? You're in the right place, because the Akashic Records allow us to, above all, access the wisdom of our soul. And that's why I called this workshop your soul wisdom on speed dial, because that's kind of how I see it. When you know how to tune in to that frequency of your highest self, you get access to not only what your soul wants to tell you about you now, but if it's relevant, it gets to tell you about all kinds of other past lives you might have had, or other dimensional experiences, and anything else that you might wish to know. So imagine having your soul wisdom on speed dial. What does that allow you to do? Well, it allows you to break free of any and all illusions that you might have running at any point in time in your life, and it allows you to kind of like, imagine walking into a dark room, and your intuition can be kind of like a flashlight, where if you shine it somewhere, it shows you whatever that beam of light lights up. Working with your Akashic Records is like turning on the light in that room, where you get to see everything that's relevant. So imagine being able to always know the next aligned action required to reach your goals. Imagine being able to, first of all, decide what it is that you want. So many of us, myself included, often are afraid to decide what we want because we don't really know if we can get it. So imagine being able to almost like quantum leap over years of inner work, because you have this speed dial to your soul, and you can instantly clear old patterns, old challenges, and again, be able to connect yourself to that highest truth of who you are. Imagine being able to quickly stop spinning out of, our minds often will be on repeat, on a hamster wheel, where old beliefs, old stories, all of that old programming tends to creep up, because we are wired to recreate the familiar. And that is actually our strongest human drive. So imagine being able to hack that and decide what it is you want, and then go after it and actually receive it. So having your soul wisdom on speed dial gives you, more than this one thing, but this one thing for sure. It gives you unshakable certainty whenever you need it in yourself. It doesn't come without practice. Okay. This isn't a magic wand. This isn't like a unicorn ride. It does require commitment from you, because like any successful relationship, your relationship to yourself requires you to be able to show up for yourself, right? And practice interpreting, practice hearing that voice of your soul. And that's all it takes is practice. So who am I and why am I talking about this? Well, like I said in the beginning, Kasia Rachfall. I live in Kelowna. Been working with the records since about 2014, publicly since 2015-ish. And the records came to me in kind of a interesting way. I really struggled as a mom. I was suicidally depressed after my kids were born and just really wasn't happy. I felt really trapped in my life and I couldn't figure out why. And so that really threw me on this journey of self-discovery, healing, personal growth. I went back to school, got a psychology degree, studied neurolinguistic programming. That led me to meeting some really cool people who, I'm just going to mute everyone, make sure there's no background noise. Met some really cool people who introduced me to the concept of energy work. And I mean, that opened up a whole new world for me. And eventually these words kept popping up, Akashic Records. And I was like, I need to know what that is. I felt the full body yes of that's my next step. And so I found a couple of readers, had a couple of readings, hated the whole thing. I thought it was dumb. And basically it kept popping up for me. And so I said, you know what? I'm just going to do this myself. So I found a teacher, learned, and here we are, 7 years later, I found myself teaching, because the records, once we develop that sacred relationship with this energy, it guides us and leads us into unexpected, beautiful places. So I teach 2 courses now. I have an introductory course and then a certification in my method as well. So I can share more about that with you after the workshop. But basically what the records did for me is they helped me heal. They helped illuminate the truth of why I was so stuck and struggling and feeling trapped as a mother, specifically as a mother. And if you can imagine, whether you have children or not, the shame that brought up for me, like struggling as a mom, really feeling trapped by motherhood, the shame was just burning me up. And so the Akashic Records really helped me to understand where that came from and what I needed to do in order to shift out of it. And I thought, okay, wonderful. I'm going to do this work and then I'll sort of move on and go back to my NLP coaching and healing work. But the Akashic Records obviously had other plans for me. And I really learned that it's important for us to have a connection to our higher wisdom, because it's like it's something bigger than us, right? And we all know that there's more to life than just the mundane stuff that we're living. And especially if you've been someone who's experienced any kind of challenge, being able to make sense of that from that higher level perspective, from that bird's eye view of like, why me? Why this? How does any of that make sense? So sometimes we receive information about past lives and how they're relevant, or sometimes even other experiences. I could talk for days about some of the cool readings that I've had for myself and with clients, where I've experienced the universe like I didn't even know was possible. So I'm grateful that there is this thing called the Akashic Records, because it helped me heal and it put me on this path to helping others connect to their soul wisdom, right? Again, soul wisdom on speed dial. So I would love to know from you, and you can put it in the comments if you feel comfortable. Do you know what the Akashic Records are, first of all? And how did you hear about them first? So let me bring up the chat here. And you don't have to, because again, I'm recording this and it's going to be shared as a replay publicly. But if you are comfortable sharing, that's wonderful. Yeah, so I keep hearing others talk about them publicly from me, heard of them through coaching circles, but very new to me. Wonderful. Never had a reading. Okay, so we have participants here who are either new or have heard about it, or perhaps even experienced the energy of the records with me or with someone else. And so that's wonderful. Again, I'm convinced that if you feel called, then it doesn't matter if you study with me or some other teacher, or if you read a book about it, they will keep calling you and they won't leave you alone until you basically decide, okay, how does this energy want to communicate with me, and what relationship does it want to have with me? So you're really in the right place, whether you're very new or you have had some experience, because there's so many different ways into the Akashic Records. Because you're here in my workshop, I feel like you perhaps are drawn to a more practical approach, a system that allows you to get in every time so that you can trust that you are actually communicating with the highest wisdom of your soul. And another person saying from my mentor who got someone to do a masterclass than me. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So you're really in the right place. And again, I have a method that I've been given from the records. I was at one point several years ago, when I first developed my certification course, I was given information about a past life that I had, where I was a man named Tam in Vietnam, like hundreds of years ago, doing exactly this thing. I was teaching and I was doing readings, and I thought, well, that's cool. Sure, why not? Whether or not I can verify that, of course, is irrelevant, at least to me. So you're in the right place if you're curious. And if you do want a system, I'm happy to share that with you at the end. But for now, let's dive in to what the Akashic Records are. So basically, in a nutshell, the shortest story is the Akashic Records are like a library. They are a vibrational archive of our soul wisdom, not just our soul wisdom, but basically anything in our known universe. Don't know if there's more than one universe. Don't know if there's all these theories. I can't tell you if it's all universes that you can access in the records. No clue, but I know for sure we can access the one we exist in. And so it's like a quantum field of information that exists as a vibrational field. And if you know how to attune your energy to it and how to interpret the information that comes from it, you can communicate with it. You can ask questions, you can receive answers, you can receive guidance. The word Akasha comes from Sanskrit, and it means ether or primary substance. And it is so fine and delicate and responsive. There's another word I'm looking for, but it's not coming to me, that it records everything. Sensitive, that's the word I'm looking for. It's so sensitive that it records every vibration known that exists in our universe, which means every thought, every decision, every action, every event, anything that exists vibrates. Therefore, it is recorded in this field. And of course, we can ask about anything, but there are a few parameters around whether or not we will receive information. And of course, we cover all of that in my courses. What can the Akashic Records do and not do? So the Akashic Records are not predictive or prescriptive. What does that mean? Well, because we have free will, we cannot be told what to do by spirit, right? So as humans, of course, we tell each other what to do, and that's just humans. But our spirit, our soul, angels, archangels, whatever you ascribe, that higher realm to, cannot tell us what to do. They can offer, they can give us information, they can illuminate truths, but we as human beings are the ones who have the ultimate choices. Because if spirit could tell us what to do, then that would negate free will, right? So the Akashic Records will never, ever tell you what to do. They will offer information, offer truth, offer potentials, but you get to decide, okay, that resonates, I'm doing that, or no, I'm not doing that. Because we have that free will and we get to choose, the Akashic Records can also not tell you the future, because the future depends on your choices alone. Again, if spirit could dictate to us and decide for us, then the future would be a lot more set in stone. But because it's not, we have the choices, then we get to decide our future. So oftentimes I will have, and I've even wanted to know, like, what happens if, or when will this happen for me? Like, I've been working so hard, when will I get a certain outcome? They can't say, well, you'll get it on Tuesday or you'll get it next year. When we make a decision to move in a certain direction, that creates a series of potentials. And so the Akashic Records can illuminate for us, you know, based on your current decisions and trajectory, here are the potentials that are possible. But again, there is no timeline that they can assign, and there is no certainty that they can assign. Does that make sense to everyone? So can't tell you what to do, can't tell you when something will happen. What they can do is give you access to the history, wisdom, guidance, and potential of who you are, of your soul. They can tell you why your soul took on this particular body, this particular lifetime. They can tell you about why you have certain challenges in your life, why you have certain relationships in your life. And they give you all of this information from a perspective of unconditional love. So when you go into the records, whether you do it for yourself or you have a reading with someone like me or another person who reads them, the information that you will be given is always given through the lens of unconditional love, because the purpose of the Akashic Records is to remind all of humanity of their wholeness, enoughness, worthiness, and divine self. If you knew that without a doubt right now, that you are completely whole, enough, worthy, and divine just because you exist, wouldn't that change everything? Like, I know we know that intellectually. Those of us who are, you know, if you're in this workshop, chances are you've considered that. Like, of course I'm enough. Of course I'm whole. But chances are that life has also thrown you some curveballs and made you think or believe otherwise, where you might not necessarily fully embody that intellectual knowing. And so working with the Akashic Records allows you to peel back the layers of old stories, old belief systems, old conditioning, all of the things that mask or hide your wholeness, enoughness, worthiness, and divine self. So I hope that's making sense. Like, that is the main purpose of why they exist, at least as I understand it. There's likely others, but that has always been the one that has been underlining everything as I've been working with them. So what I want to do now is share with you 3 specific examples of how the Akashic Records have helped. And I'll be sharing case studies of my own students to illustrate kind of where they were, how they worked with the records, and then what happened after when they were able to move through challenges and the truths that they received. Because I think it's just easier to understand the potential of working with this field when we can attach like a tangible example to it. So problem one, like one problem that we can experience in life, and this happened to one of my students, is feeling like she didn't know her purpose. And because she didn't know her purpose, she felt completely lost and off track. Now, I don't know about you, but I've felt that way before, where, you know, if I could just know what am I doing here in detail, please, right? With footnotes and an appendix and a glossary and all of that, then I could just go about doing my thing, and then I wouldn't feel so lost. So my student is the type of person that really likes to have a plan and a solid structure in her life. Like, that just works for her. And she's building a beautiful client practice, and she has 2 young children, and she would love to have more balance. That's kind of why she came to this work, is she felt like, well, first of all, am I too rigid? Like, I don't know. I really like structure, but then it's so hindering because I actually really feel like I'm doing everything wrong, you know? And so that was really standing in her way. She was really stressed by the perceived lack of time and the demands of her family and the business that she wanted to build. She felt like she knew what she had to do, but again, she was like, I don't know what my purpose is. So I feel like I'm doing it all wrong. And I know what I have to do, but I feel like I just block myself from doing it. And of course, her mind kept spinning in circles, questioning herself, doubting all of that. So as she started working with the Akashic Records, what they helped her to see is that her purpose is so much more broad and all-encompassing than just the things she did or does. So our purpose, you know, both for my student and just as in general for all of us, is not just the things we do. It's not just the things we teach or the things we learn or, you know, our vocation or our job, whatever it is that we think we need to be doing, how we show up in the world. My student was able to discover personal information through the records about why her particular soul took on her body and her life, and what her life path includes, like the potentials of what her soul wants to experience and learn through her human body. And because she was being given some of these details, she could see that being a mom, being a practitioner, and building a business and having structure and doing all the things she does was actually already fulfilling her purposes. That even if she never did anything else, she would have already fulfilled a lot of them because she was on path. And because of this information, she was able to give herself permission to trust her own choices and desires more. Right? She understood that there's a reason why she loves what she loves and wants what she wants. And there's a reason why her love of structure is actually part of her purpose. It's not meant to constrain her. Her desire to have things organized and put, you know, in certain places and in certain boxes is part of who she is. And that's, you know, it gave her, like, it let her take herself off the hook so that she stopped worrying about whether she was doing things right or wrong and just relax and just do them. And it really lightened her decision-making and the energy around how she took action, because she was no longer trying to measure herself according to some arbitrary stick, like measuring stick, that she thought her purpose would give her or align her to. She was just able to trust herself. And of course, because of that, over time, her vibration shifted and she began having more fun and more success, right? So how many of you have ever experienced that, where you've asked yourself that question, like, what's my purpose? And if I only knew it, then all these other things would be easier. And yes, the Akashic Records can give you more detail about your purpose, but they're never going to spit out like a beautiful little printout answer with annotations and a glossary and, you know, chapter headings and all of that, because you don't need that. And that's what my student learned, was that if she relaxed and simply followed her desires, followed the things she knew she wanted to do, her purpose kind of took care of itself. And because she did get some of those details from the records, that really eased her mind. So it's okay to want to know, right? Our mind, we have a mind for a reason, and our mind is really brilliant and supports us a lot. And so the Akashic Records can give us information that satisfy the mind, so that the rest of us can integrate and just keep doing what we're here to do without worrying so much about whether we're doing it right. So it really helps us release judgment of ourselves. Another student of mine experienced the problem of feeling blocked around her own gifts and her passions. So she was a commercial graphic artist for her career, and she had recently retired and was looking forward to taking up her art as a hobby just for herself, right? Just to practice her love of fine art, which was actually, you know, where she had began her career. She had trained as a fine artist. But she couldn't. She had this beautiful studio set up in her home, and she was like, I can't even go in there. I feel so blocked. Why? Why can't I give this to myself? What the records illuminated for her is that she felt like she had blocks around deserving or worthiness, and like her being worthy of her own the pleasure and joy of creating for herself. She had this belief that her gifts had to be for others. Like, unless she was sharing her gifts with others and creating art for the world, it wasn't supposed to be, she wasn't supposed to be doing it. And of course, that's not true, right? That's not true at all. Her art had been of service. She had used her beautiful creative talent to create a whole, business to serve others, to help others achieve their goals and their dreams. And now that she had fulfilled that and she felt she was done with that and retired, the Akashic Records really allowed her to see the value of her art for herself and allowed her to see how her pursuing and being able to open her own gift for herself would bring a lot of balance and service to her family now and herself, right? Herself first, because she would allow herself to be balanced, to be fulfilled, to fill her own cup, right? To work from a place of heart. And that would bring balance and be in service to her family, which was equally important to her. So the Akashic Records gave her the understanding and allowed her to step into a place of safety, that her pleasure actually mattered to her own life force. Like, allow that to sink in for a moment. Imagine giving yourself the permission to pursue what you love for yourself without it having to serve anyone else. I know I've found that scary for sure. Like, what do you mean? I'm allowed to open my own birthday gift and I don't have to share it with anybody? We were often told in our world, in our society, that, if we have a gift, we're supposed to give it away. And what the records have clarified is that that's actually not true. We need to include ourselves in the opening and sharing of our gifts. If we don't allow ourselves to have pleasure and joy and balance through our own gifts, then our life force suffers, right? And we often feel stuck and like we're disconnected from ourselves. So when my student realized, she was able to begin painting for the joy of it and express her ideas for herself without them having to be for sale. And the freedom that brought to her, the joy, it's beautiful. So in this case, the Akashic Records were able to illuminate for her how she was standing in her own way of expressing herself and what shifts she could take, what shifts needed to happen within her so that she could see her own importance and really own her own importance and continue the next steps of enjoying this next stage of her life. So again, like, simple, it seems so simple, right? I know I'm standing in my way. What do I need to do? Sometimes these little nuances, these little reminders or big reminders from the perspective of our soul, that soul wisdom just shifts everything, because it allows the mind to understand and then allows us to integrate that into our body. And then that allows us to take action just in different ways with different energy. And so then the results are different. Resonates here too. Often feels like I have to justify the time I spend on these practices. Yes. Oh my gosh. I have, that resonates so much. Imagine being able to just do what you want to do without justifying it, right? And still being in service. So yeah, beautiful. And then the last example that I'm going to share with you is of a student who really struggled with accepting herself as she was. And again, like, gosh, my hand goes up there too, right? Have you ever struggled to accept yourself? I think, who hasn't, right? So this student carried a judgment around a certain habit that she has in her life. And because of this habit, she felt like she could not access her intuition clearly. And she also couldn't be successful in the business that she wanted to create and build. And she had a brilliant concept, but was stuck around what to do next. And she really felt like the problem was this habit. She didn't know how to take action on any of her ideas, and she has tons of ideas. Like, it's not the lack of ideas that was stopping her. It was this idea of like, well, I can't take action because I don't know where to start. I don't trust myself to make the right choice. And she thought, well, I can't get rid of this habit. Like, I can't kick it. How can I do anything? If I can't do this, how can I ever be successful about anything? And this was a really interesting case because as she started working with the records, at first she wasn't hearing any information. Like, she kept feeling stuff, but she wasn't really receiving anything until one day the truth dawned on her as she was doing her practices that until she accepted her own power and empowerment, regardless of any habit that she had or didn't have, that's what would unlock her potential. That's what would give her the, permission and the trust in herself to take the next steps. That's what would move the needle. It's like, if you didn't have any habits, or if you have habits, those are not relevant to whether you are powerful or not, right? Your power simply is, and you can own that. And then the habits are sort of a whole other thing. And so she realized that, yeah, actually, I really love having this habit. And that's why I'm not, getting rid of it. That's why it's been so hard to get rid of it, because I actually do really enjoy it. And it's a part of who I am. And I'm like, I'm not going to change it. And of course, as you can imagine, giving yourself permission at that level to be who you are, be who you want to be, enjoy all the things you do, and know that you are powerful, it unlocked everything. All of a sudden, she was able to receive wisdom more clearly from her records. She was able to, choose a direction, decide, okay, I'm going to start with this first in my business that I'm building, and kind of like opened the floodgates, right? It doesn't mean that there's no challenge. It doesn't mean that she still doesn't have to make decisions and research and all the things that come with making a business successful. But at least she was now able to trust herself more and realize that whatever she does or doesn't do is like secondary to that inner permission of, I am who I am and I'm powerful. So that self-acceptance was instrumental. And again, taking it out of the intellectual realm into the embodiment of what it means to accept yourself, right? And then because she was able to create integrity in her own being, it allowed her to then move a lot more quickly in creating a business where she's in integrity with her clients and her ideas. So based on those three examples, which one resonated with you the most? Like, which one have you struggled with any of them? And feel free to share in the comments. Have you ever been in that situation where you either didn't trust yourself or didn't accept yourself or thought you had to give your gifts away? I know I've definitely been there. All of the above. Yeah, I know. The three same. Yeah, I know. It's and that's what I love, not being certain of path and trusting in personal path. Yeah. That's what I love about doing this type of work, is because it makes us realize we're not alone. Like, this is just being human. And it reiterates that purpose of the Akashic Records, just simply when we can just remember that we are whole enough, worthy, and divine, that in itself is enough. Creating for myself, I do it with some things, but I realize I stop myself with others. Yeah, exactly. So even just listening to those stories and those examples, I hope it's freeing some things up and making you realize, like helping you realize, inviting you that whether or not you pursue reading the records, you can make these decisions for yourself and give yourself the freedom. I tend to allow myself to get stuck in not feeling like I know enough. Good old imposter syndrome. Yep. Why don't I feel worthy? That sort of thing. Yeah, exactly. And those things can originate, in a past life, in a lineage, in wherever. And the records can illuminate that for you. And I've just started owning some of my gifts. That's wonderful. Congratulations. All right. So before we do some mini readings, I would like to share with you some information about the course that I have coming up on October 28th. It's called How to Read Your Own Akashic Records and Chart Your Purposes. So very, well, it is what it is. How to read your own Akashic Records. That's exactly what you get to learn. I created that course because I do have a long certification course that's 6 months long that allows you to not only learn to read for yourself, but also read for others. But I realized that not everybody wants that right away. And a lot of people just want to start to sort of tiptoe into it by learning to read for themselves and having that practice. And so that's exactly what this course is made to do. It's spread out over 3 weeks. So week 1, the class is usually about 3 hours long. We focus on, okay, these are the details that you need to know. This is the key to the records. Here are the record keepers, more parameters or rules, and how to ask powerful questions. So within week 1, you already get to go in and you know exactly what to do when you go in there, right? So again, you get your speed dial, you get to call up your soul and be like, all right, I'm ready, let's talk. And you get to know exactly how to do that. You also get to practice receiving the information because it doesn't always come like you would think, you know, in a text message or like having someone on the other line. It takes practice. And so I walk you through all the different ways in which information can come. We talk about how do you know if you're making it up? How can you trust yourself? All of that. So that's week 1. Week 2, we get to dive into purpose. And purpose is this crazy idea that has been like packaged and sold to us by the personal development industry. And a lot of people, including myself, can feel a lot of angst around it. And so week 2 is all about demystifying purpose and giving you some tools to look at it from a bunch of different ways to give you permission to like put purpose on the shelf, make sure, like tick it off, know that you're already doing it, and then like just go do the things. Like live your life, do your work without that angst. So I've created resources that help you access detail about your purposes because you have more than one, right? You have more than one. So you get detail about your purposes, and I teach you how to go into your records and poke around and get more detail for yourself. So excited for this workshop. I missed the last one. I'm happy to be able to, I'm happy you're able to join as well. And then, so that's week 2. And then week 3, we have Q&A. So the reason it's spread out over 3 weeks is because you get the key and you get to go practice, right? Practice is important. And like 15 minutes a day or 15 minutes, 3 times a week is lots. You don't have to be there for hours. And so you get the key week 1, purpose info week 2, you practice. Week 3, we have Q&A. And there's always questions. And I love the community coming back together of students, sharing their experiences, asking the questions, because we all learn, including me, right? I've been working with the records a long time, but that doesn't mean I know everything. And I learn from my students' experiences. And it's like we build this field of information, we build density into what we know about the records, both from my experiences and yours. So what's also included with the course is community. You get all the recordings, and all of that is situated in the community where it's not just me and current students, it's me, current students, and all our alumni who are engaged in the practice. Not everybody sticks around. It's not for everybody, and that's cool. But as a student, once you take the course once, you're welcome to take it anytime I teach it, right? You can just audit it like 800 times. If I teach it 800 times, you can be there 800 times, and you always learn something new and you hear something new. So I'm going to share the link, and you'll get this via email as well. But if you're curious now, you can go check it out. We start October 28th. And like I said, if you can't make it live, there are recordings and there's ongoing support. Our community is housed on Discord. It's important to me to keep it off Facebook just because not everybody loves Facebook. And so we are on Discord, which is, pretty simple. So any questions about that before we dive into the mini readings? Awesome. So let me bring up my list of questions. Oh, okay. So what's going to happen now is I have some questions that were emailed to me ahead of time, so I can tune in and grab answers around that. If you didn't get a chance to read through the prep guide where I detail ad nauseum how to ask good questions, basically the parameters are this. Because the records can't tell you what to do, yes and no questions are not good questions to ask, right? Best questions to ask are something like, you know, why? Why do I have this challenge? Why did I have that challenge? Why this person? Why this relationship? That sort of thing. When questions are also not good to ask because the records can't foretell the future. So basically, you know, why and how, like, how can I move through this? How is this serving my purpose? That type of thing. Or if you just have a general question or a general, you know, area that you want to ask about, having just a context and then like, tell me more is a great way to start. So there's a few parameters for those of you who, if you do want to ask a question, you're welcome to stick it in the chat. I don't have to say your name because this will be posted publicly. And so I'm trying not to reference anybody who's on here. So that if you do want a question and if you have a question, you want an answer, I'm happy to answer it for you as anonymously as I can. Okay, so I'm just gonna find, okay. First question, what can I do to maintain my core in the midst of everything? Okay, so let me just, I always get so excited when I teach, and so I'm gonna just take a moment to get my energy in the right place. Okay, how can I maintain my core in the midst of everything? So how I receive information is often a lot of imagery, a lot of felt sense, sometimes thoughts, sometimes words. And what I see is you sitting on the ground, like in the dirt, on the earth, sitting with your spine aligned to the ground. So like root chakra down on the ground, bum on the ground. And it doesn't have to be long, but it's like maybe 5 minutes, first thing in the morning if you can, because the importance of the body being balanced grounds the mind. So the mind can get, you know, it can like go off on a tangent. It gets on the freight train and the freight train starts moving and off you go. But taking that moment to like sit on the ground. And of course, if it's raining or whatever, like if you can't sit on the dirt, that's fine, but find a place to sit on a rug or something or a cushion. Dirt is best in this case. And just like visualize your mind sort of being like a liquid that flows down your spine and down into the earth and grows roots into the earth. Can I get more information around that? What I'm just being shown is like that will really help you feel like a magnet. So sometimes when there's a lot going on, right, you pop up into your head and your energy's all up here, kind of like you're taking off a sweater and you're kind of like stuck up here in it. Sitting down on the ground and imagining your mind kind of liquefying and being drawn down into the earth. It's like you take that sweater and you put it back on and you're comfortable in it. So it magnetizes your thoughts down and it keeps them from spinning out of control. So I hope that's helpful. I imagine it's going to take some practice and just remembering to do it because it's not so much like how you think about the challenges or the things that are going on. It's like where you think from. And if you can think from being rooted, it changes everything. So good question. Okay, next question I received. So there's a few questions here. Tell me more about my purpose. How can I get there? Why am I here? Why my past? Why those challenges? So let's focus on that one. Why my past? Why those challenges? And let's see what comes through because purpose is a big can of worms. And we cover it ad nauseum in the course. So Why my past? Why those challenges? Okay, so it's interesting. The sense I get in my body, see, and sometimes the information comes through in such a way where language feels so limiting, but the feeling is so like, so if I botch this, I'm going to talk until it makes sense. Okay, so bear with me. The challenges that you experienced, the sense I'm getting about them, and so, you know, take away from this what you will, is if you didn't know from others, if you didn't have the perspective of others or story from others about the challenges you had, how would you think about those challenges? Would they have seemed as challenging as they were? It's almost like the putting energy outside of you and listening to how others perceive how hard something is makes that thing feel harder. Does that make sense? So that's one thing. Okay, tell me more. Because I get the sense, and again, this may not be a fully conscious sense in your body, but see how it resonates. It's like I get the sense that there's a part of you inside that really feels really, really proud and accomplished because you walked through challenge. And yet that part of you isn't getting a lot of voice, or it's like it's being minimized because there's this discourse around, if you have challenge, well, you better suffer, like you should suffer. And so I've definitely, you know, had that belief system around, I shouldn't be proud of a challenge, I should suffer through the challenge. So does that make sense? Let me know if that lands, but it's like, can you give voice and spend time with the part of you that wants to celebrate that you walked through this and wants to celebrate the empowerment that you received as a result of walking through this? The why the challenges will become more clear when you can look at them through the perspective of, I did that. I don't care what anybody else says. I did that. And I grew because of it. And look at who I've become because of it. Like that, they're not giving me any more about why until that is accepted, until that is put at least as important as the fact that that was fucking hard. Yes, not minimizing the fact that that was fucking hard. And yes, suffering may or may not have been present. But look what I did. So I hope that resonates, because that's what they're showing me. It's like, that's the thing that needs to be acknowledged, at least, even if it doesn't feel important, it's important. Okay, so I had another question here. Why is it I am stuck in the worry of not being enough? Let's see. Okay. So they're showing me it's a lineage thing, partly. It's a lineage thing, it's a paradigm thing. So what often when they show me that it's a paradigm thing, you're one of the souls. There's many women souls, right? Souls who've taken on female bodies who are here to break down the patriarchal paradigm, not through fighting or activism or whatever, but just through embodying more of feminine strength and power from a place of forgiveness, acceptance, like just being it versus overpowering. So it's this idea of bringing in, like bringing in more light. Like when the sun rises, the darkness kind of recedes, right? The sun doesn't have to muscle the darkness away or try to like cut pieces of it out. It's simply when you embody more of one thing, the thing that doesn't fit anymore recedes. And so that's big picture. Bringing it into more personal, there's a lineage of feminine, like of female family members who have fought this same thing. And it stems, the root of it comes from that, the feminine being squashed. And so there's probably more specifics. So how can this person overcome this? How can she begin to accept being good enough? So the first thing I feel in here is like, allow yourself to relax that there's nothing wrong with you because you have this belief or this way of being, this worry. There's nothing wrong with you. It's this idea between fault and blame and responsibility. Like you didn't do anything because of it. The bulk of this comes from this paradigm and from like family lineage of women fighting to be good enough, to assert themselves, to be seen. So hopefully that can relax you a little bit around, sorry, I moved the thing, here we go. And just like start to relax around the fact that it's nothing you did or didn't do. And the more, so whatever practices you have or want to, bring on around embodying your own empowerment and your own power, start there. And if you could remember that image of like the light, the sun rising, dissipating the darkness as opposed to fighting against it. So I hope that makes sense. How can I best move past the blocks I feel around my own project? Photography feels easy, light and free, but my other projects have felt like a slog for a while. So what I'm hearing around that is, it's like the contrast of the slog and the pushing and shoving versus the free and the light. It's like when you look at your process of having gotten to, oh, photography, sure, yeah, okay, I'll do that. Like, how did you come to that decision? What was it that brought you there? What was the process? Because it's like you needed to learn to make this decision and have it feel so contrastingly different, because now you can make decisions about other things. It doesn't mean that those other projects aren't meant to be, or that they're wrong, or that they're like, whatever. It's more like, is there a different way to look at them? Is there a different way to go about them or think about them or align your energy towards them that brings in the lightness and freedom as well? Perhaps some of them you're going to be like, I don't want to do that anymore. And again, follow the process that you followed to come to this decision. Like, how did you finally give yourself permission to pursue this instead of, banging on those other doors that felt like they weren't opening? I feel like that was the important part. You're welcome. The area of romantic relationship. Okay. So the biggest thing is forgiving yourself for whatever you think you screwed up, for whatever you think you did wrong before, for whatever you feel like you didn't have. And it's forgiveness for self. Forgiveness for self is often the hardest, just because sometimes it's like, it's taking the bird's eye view of, okay, if you are the soul, and the soul is absolute love, and the soul doesn't suffer the way the human self does. If you could imagine yourself being at that level and being like, I forgive my soul for choosing this suffering. I forgive my soul for choosing this hard path, like that level of forgiveness. that would be the step if you choose to take it, because that feels like it's still sort of hanging onto you. It's like a coat you're wearing. And if you can take that off, it'll be lighter, and you'll be able to, like, your energy will shift around it. And then when your energy shifts around it, then you're able to see other opportunities, other ways of thinking and being. So I hope that helps. How do I resolve the physical pain, discomfort I experience in my body, which feels like it has an emotional link, and despite so many practice, I can't seem to resolve it for good. I feel like it pulls me from fully engaging, showing up in my life. Okay. I'm gonna read that again. So I'm not a medical medium, and so my information may not come from that perspective. Let me see what they do tell me. Okay. So it comes as a body sensation, and the pain, the word I hear about the pain is, and so again, I'm just going to talk through this because I don't always understand what the heck they're showing me. So seeing pain as treasure, seeing pain as treasure, in the sense that when an oyster gets a grain of sand stuck in it and it makes a pearl over time, but like that sort of metaphor. So tell me more. And again, not being a medical professional, I'm not a doctor, I don't play one on TV. So take what resonates, and if you have illness or if you have pain, then I invite you to, if you're not already, working with professionals around it. From the energetic perspective or the emotional perspective, I get this sense that, like, the pearl is either already built or you're building it. And it's not so much about removing it as knowing that that's what it is. It's a treasure. And like getting our human mind to wrap around going like, well, how can pain be treasure? That's the question. And I don't know that it's for me to understand, but it's like, does that resonate? Does that take you in a direction that perhaps you haven't considered? Recognizing it as that, what has that experience allowed you to become, to do, to be? How has it allowed you to think? How has it caused you, invited you to evolve as you, that if you didn't have this experience, you wouldn't have become? Does that make sense? So it's like, if you consider that this experience and this pain could be thought of as a treasure, even if it's a stretch, does that open up any other possibilities? Because I feel like until there's some reconciliation with that possibility, it's just going to be an irritant, right? So what would the oyster think if it knew that it has this beautiful treasure inside it? So yeah, let me know if that makes sense. Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, beautiful. So there you go. You've seen the records in action. It's interesting for me to do readings because sometimes language feels so limiting. And this is why practice is so important, even for me, which is why I continue to do readings to this day, is because there's always a new way of looking at something. There's always a new way to explain something, to think about things. And I get just as much out of it hearing the answers. I don't always remember, but it expands our way of seeing the world. It expands our capacity to understand ourselves, to understand how we can perhaps look at things or approach things or go about things that help us, not be so stuck, and trust ourselves more and see ourselves more and be more just in line with who we came here to be. Okay, so yes, thank you. It has definitely fueled my search for practices that will resolve the pain and look beyond the physical. More energy rich has a treasure in my life for sure. Okay, so yeah, I hope that what's the word? Accepting that will bring more different opportunity or different paths to then solving it if that's what's meant to happen. But definitely acceptance of that, not just mentally, but like the embodiment of it. It's always about the fullness, the embodiment of everything that's important. In my client practice, I work with a system of energy kinesiology where we remove stress from the body using acupressure points. And in my sessions, especially this year, I've been invited to integrate higher level soul frequencies of people into their physical body. And so the importance of the physical body has become so apparent that our soul isn't just this nebulous energy that like exists somewhere. It's actually tethered to our muscles, our ligaments, our joints, our chakras, everything. And so the more we can embody our knowing in ourselves, the more our soul is firmly embedded in ourselves, which I think is so interesting. Like, I don't even know the science behind that, but the experience of it in my sessions is pretty magical. Any questions about the records themselves, about anything I said before we wrap up, or about the course? I would love for all of you to join me. Here's the link again, and I will send it out in an email. But I just want to make sure everyone had the opportunity to take everything in that I said. And if you have questions, now's your chance. And if not, then I will wrap up. Oh, how often do the courses happen if this round doesn't work out? Well, this was supposed to be the last one, and I'm playing around with the idea of doing one more in November, but that's not a for sure. Typically, I teach the introduction 4 to 6 times a year. So I will plan dates for 2023. The certification, if that's something that interests you, because that allows you to have a system for reading the Akashic Records for others. And that's something you can include as a part of your business, or set up a separate thing where you're a reader. That one always happens in January of every year. So I pegged the date for the certification to begin January 23rd or 24th. Great question. Thank you. All right. Is this for people who are already very intuitive? Yes, it can be. So this is a question that often comes up, and we actually had a discussion about this in our last alumni reconnection call, because in between classes, we have a call every month just to stay connected. So our intuition, and even if you channel already, there's subtle differences, okay? So our intuition, again, can be more like the flashlight, where, actually, no, let me use this analogy. This one came out from one of my students, and I love it, and it illustrates it better. So as human beings, we have this beautiful thing called our intuition, which allows us to know certain things that are happening. So imagine yourself being a character in a movie, right? And you know certain things, and you have a sense about things. Now, the Akashic Records are kind of like being in the audience watching the movie, where you know so much more, right? It's like you see the whole screen of what's happening, and you may not know the future of what will happen at the end of the movie, because we have free choice, because they can't tell us what to do, but you know the rest of it, right? So it's like, again, it illuminates a broader perspective for you, about you, or if you choose to read for others, about that person. It illustrates the truth, it illuminates the truth that's relevant. So this is something I've tried to hack, where I've asked about things that, like, for example, one of the things people love to ask is like, well, how many past lives have I had? And they won't tell you, because it's not relevant. If it is relevant, they will tell you. If it's relevant to your current lifetime, to know that you've had, I don't know, pick a number of past lives, then because that information will help you feel more worthy, more whole, more enough, and more divine, then that information will be revealed. But if it's not relevant, the records, there's no need to tell you, right? You will only be told information that helps you remember that you're whole enough, divine, and worthy. And so that's basically the difference. And sometimes it is a little bit infuriating, and I'll just be fully transparent. It is a little bit infuriating because you're like, well, if I could just know everything, then I would be so much better off and I would know what to do. But the problem with that is if we knew everything, we would be overwhelmed, right? And if we presuppose that our record keepers and our soul reside in the all that is, and the all that is love, then they don't have to dump information on us, hoping and wishing that we understand. They will only give us, I'm totally personifying, spirit and the record keepers will give us the next bit that we need in order to remember our wholeness, worthiness, enoughness, and divinity, right? They know that eventually we will remember. They don't need to hope and wish. And so I think that's why we don't always get to know. Yeah, knowing everything doesn't always help. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. So I hope that answers your question. I know I sometimes go off on tangents. So yeah, even if you're intuitive, it helps. If you've never talked to your intuition before, this is a great way to plug in because it gives you a system that works every time. And so you know exactly which frequency you're talking to. Some things are forgotten on purpose. Exactly. And I'm starting to realize our human life is about remembering. As much as it is about experiencing, learning, blah, blah, blah. Above all, I think it's about remembering. So beautiful. Thank you so much, everyone. I so appreciate you spending your Friday afternoon with me. It's been a pleasure to share this information with you and do some mini readings. If you have any other questions that pop up, I will be emailing you so you have my information and you can simply reply and ask or reach out to me if you want to chat. Let me know. Other than that, have a beautiful weekend and I will see you around online. You're welcome. Take care. Bye.